Hi folks, welcome to my case study, Get This Child Out of My Class! EDL 853 by me, Rich Colgan. Okay, so problem identification and analysis. So what do we know? We know that Susan Green is a newly hired teacher directly out of college who's been hired by the school district that's a comprehensive school. That meaning that there's various administrators scattered throughout the district that the schools kind of share throughout the year. The superintendent stays one day at one school, goes to another day at another school. The district shares resources such as psychologists, nurses, and social workers, along with the other administrators. At every building, there is a teacher who also does administrative services as well. In continuing with what we know Susan was replacing Mrs. Lewis, who had been in the position for the previous 25 years. Now, a lot has probably changed in that 25 years of education, which we'll get into in a little bit. During the 6th week of school, Susan Green had her first major issue. It was with a student called Carl Hughes, and it was in Mrs. Nancy Taylor's class. Mrs. Taylor told Susan that Carl's behavior had been escalating to a point where she could no longer handle it. She gave an example of Carl sharpening a pencil and throwing it at her head, and other examples of how belligerent and inappropriate Carl had become in class. Carl's an identified behavior disorder student. Mrs. Taylor wants him out of the room because she feels like she can't control him anymore, and now she quotes that she is scared for herself and she is scared for the other students. Susan, being a responsible teacher, attempted to reconvene the IEP for multiple days, calling home, trying to get a hold of parents, trying to figure out what to do, and finally when she was able to get a hold of them, they came in and were able to discuss a new plan for the IEP where she saw a lot of tension between the mother and the father, them being divorced, and the mother blaming the father for the behavior of Carl, and it wasn't a real positive atmosphere. So on top of that, what we need to know is Carl's psychological profile that they have on file still applicable? Is it current, or does it need to be redone? Does it need to be reevaluated? Has his behavior been cross-referenced recently? Are the notes from years ago? We don't know how old the file is or what actually is in that file. Is Carl and his parents receiving any kind of counseling for the divorce? Have they sought out any kind of services? Anything the school may be able to help with through transition services? We have like what's called a wrap room where they go and talk about their feelings or problems that they need. Has any of that service occurred for Carl? What else we need to know, I think one of the big ones is, what did the previous special education teacher do with Carl, the one that was there for 25 previous years? What were her steps? What were her parameters that she used to deal with Carl? Are there any notes or lesson plans or documentation anywhere that Susan can now follow? What does Carl find pleasure in? What motivates him? What does he like? Is there a way to connect with Carl to maybe get him involved in something in the school district that he could be a positive outcome for him? Because right now his home life is not so great. He's not having a great time at school. So you got to remember that he's still a kid. So what can you find that helps motivate him or, make him happy? And have any parents contacted the teacher about Carl's behavior? Because then you have a whole other issue if other parents are complaining about another student in the classroom. So what's the problem at hand? Well, the problem is pretty simple. The general education teacher feels that the environment now is unsafe. She feels threatened, and the students in her classroom also feel threatened by this young man named Carl. He's aggressive toward the teacher, and the teacher fears that it's going to get only worse and escalate toward the other students, and she wants him pulled out of the classroom and placed in something called a resource room with workbooks for the rest of the day. That was her quote. So that takes care of category 1. Now we're on to category 2, proposed plan of action with appropriate strategies for implementation. All right, so we got our problem, so now what do? Well, first we got to meet with all the people involved with Carl to communicate the best course of action to figure out what Carl needs during the day to have some sort of success. This includes teachers, support staff, administration, parents if we can get them in, whoever else crosses paths with Carl during the school day to figure out exactly what to do with the best course of action. Allow everyone to give input to figure out what the best ideas would be to be able to come up with a solution or hopefully a plan of action for Carl. So now you've got this plan in place. You have to have a meeting with Carl himself. You've got to tell Carl exactly what's happening and what's not allowed and what's going to happen if something in the classroom is inappropriate, if he loses his mind, whatever else it might be. Once the plan is in place, monitor it very closely, assess what's working, what's not working, and then figure out what you have to tweak along the way, and hopefully it's an ongoing process to get the best result. I think one of the final steps you can do is speak to Mrs. Taylor about the effects of teachers' attitudes and correspondence with students' behaviors. And there's lots of research and articles on there that teachers that portray negative attitudes are going to have negative students in their classroom. So I think that might work a little bit too. Even though she's not going to be very receptive to it, I think it's a good idea to approach that, especially from an administrative standpoint. Okay, on to resolving the issues based upon all promoting the success of all students. Well, first off, I think you can discuss with Carl's class the part of the plan that will affect them. Maybe when Carl's out of the room or not there that day or whatever it might be, if another teacher takes him somewhere or if he has a blow up and he's out, what can they expect to happen when Carl loses it? They need to feel safe too. So that's one of the priorities of school. You need to have a safe environment in order to learn. So you want to ensure student safety in class. Students should be educated in a safe environment for optimal learning. They shouldn't be fearful of another student in the classroom. It would be very difficult to learn in that kind of environment. For this part of the resolution, I'm anticipating that multiple parents have already contacted the district or the teacher about Carl's behavior. I think I need to contact all those parents back and let them know that there is a plan in place, not necessarily give them the details, that's not really their business, but maybe how it'll affect their students or their children. I will let them know there's a plan in place, and then contact Carl's parents anytime there's an explosive issue and keep a detailed journal and log. That way, in case you can't get through to the parents or if someone accuses you of not doing anything, you can have all this documented information of the phone calls home, records, phone records, and everything at your fingertips. Okay, so now we're on to debriefing the problem and my own personal feelings, what I was thinking, what I was valuing. Thoughts and feelings. I had multiple thoughts and feelings all over the spectrum during this assignment. First, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm not going to be a special ed teacher or a special ed coordinator. Then I realized the point of the exercise, and I put myself in the regular education teacher's shoes, and I had lots of questions. I was like, okay, what would I do if this happened? I'd want the student out too, I'm sure. Was I really fearful? Was I making it a bigger deal than it was? I had lots of different questions, thoughts, and feelings. I've been in situations with explosive students. Had one girl throw a scalpel across the room one time. That wasn't fun. So you can deal with these things differently, but I could sympathize with the classroom teacher as well as the special ed teacher. Lastly, I put myself in the shoes of a parent of another child in that classroom, and I pictured my little son sitting there and this kid going off and my son coming over today saying, I'm scared to be in school. And then I lost my mind. Right? I was really upset. I was like, I'd be in the office right there, taking him to court. I kind of went off the extreme end, but I also have to remember that I'm an educator and that hopefully these people are working on a solution and not just allowing it to happen. So it was a very big mix of emotions from being extremely angry to being sympathetic. It was kind of crazy. Some of the unresolved issues, what staff is available to help with this situation? If Carl gets kicked out, who's going to take him? Is there anybody to take them to this resource center or whatever we decide to do? Is there a social worker? Is there anyone, an aide? I need to know who else can help us with this situation. They say they're understaffed, so I'm not sure this kind of plan is going to work. Who will escort Carl out of the room? And how long does he stay there? All those things need to be solved. Then the question comes, what happens if Carl is thrown out of every class that he's in, if he switches classes throughout the day, or if it goes to a special or something like that? More than once a day, is that okay to sit in the resource room? What if he ends up liking the resource room? He doesn't want to go to class anymore, so he blows up even more and gets thrown out of the class every day. Just some things to think about. Now to reflect on Standard 2. Standard 2 focuses on, promoting the academic success of all students. I feel like I was able to do this in this assignment, by having a safe and cooperative learning environment. Like I mentioned before, safety is really important in the classroom, especially for young kids. They have to feel safe to be in the classroom, to be able to learn. The last thing they should have to think about is being fearful for being hurt in the classroom. The well-being of every student is important, and that environment should be in every classroom, even though I know it's not always applicable. Lastly, I was able to involve all parties involved with Carl to collaborate and unite a plan of action that hopefully has Carl's best interest at heart. In the end, he's a kid, and we want to help him grow up to be the best he can possibly be. So all parties hopefully can see past the blow-ups. I know it's difficult. I've been there, but hopefully they can do that and come up with the best plan of action. In the end, the best possible scenario will be achieved with respect to the learning environment of Carl and the rest of the students. I think that's the key here. Well, thanks a lot for watching. Take care. I'll be checking yours out. See ya.